Welcome. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Silverlake Priestess Podcast. I'm Jaime Black. Today I'm here with Lauren Ann of Lauren Ann Alchemy, and we're going to talk about spiritual breakthroughs. If this is your first time watching or listening to this podcast, this is a place where we talk about our spiritual practice. I interview witches and priestesses and psychics and mediums and musicians that are doing spiritual work. And we talk about our spiritual practice. We talk about our sacred purpose. And we also talk about building businesses around our sacred purpose and our gifts so that we can full-time be serving into the world that we live in. So I'm really excited to have you here, Lauren.
Me too. Thank you.
If you follow me on social media, recently we did an Instagram giveaway with a group of witches. And so that's how Lauren and I met. And Lauren was giving away a ritual bag. So I was checking out her work and what it is that she does. And I was giving away music. I was giving away my most recent album called Season of the Witch. So we just kind of started chit-chatting because we were checking out each other's work. And then I said, I would love to have you come on the show. And so anyway, we've just been getting to know each other in the past week or two. And so it's always exciting for me to meet new witches. And I'm always very happy to share the work that witches are doing out in the world nowadays. Because, it's a very exciting time. Witch, the term means so many things to so many people. But really, it is a term of female empowerment currently. Like women couldn't use the term witch back in the day. And so women really like coming into their spirituality. And yes, men are witches too. And we've talked about that here on the show, but we are very like female focused here. And I like to talk to powerful witchy women and talk about what they do. So yeah, Lauren, tell us just like a little bit about you and a little bit about the work that you do. And then we'll like dive into our topics and, get to,
yeah,
go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I am an astrologer. I'm an intuitive tarot reader. I work a lot with crystals. I make spell bags for pretty much everything. I always tell people whenever they come to me with a concern, I'm like, I have a crystal for that. What's going on? I got a crystal for you. I got a crystal for everything. And so my business that I've been building and creating, I use as a way to provide, therapy and healing services for my clients and friends and customers through my tarot practice, through astrology, through crystals. I mean, getting to know ourselves and getting to trust ourselves and our own intuition is a big part of my business, and empowering people to look within and see that they have the ability, they have the knowledge, and they have the wherewithal to help themselves, and we were talking about how you and I both use tarot for certain things and how it's really helped both of us and really connected with our own intuition. And so I love to share that with all of my clients and everyone that I come in contact with.
That's the thing about this type of work is that it's teaching people to listen to their intuition. It's a practice of listening to your own intuition, but it's teaching others how to listen to themselves, how the answer is inside of them. So, it makes sense. And it's so interesting that like, this is what was deemed like so evil back in the day. And they didn't want people having personal power. They didn't want people being able to close their eyes and do meditation, ask spirit, God, goddess, whatever that like word is for you, but ask that creative energy your own self and get the answers your own self. And so it's like a really exciting time for my own self and my own business, right? It's a really exciting time to be like working within your own intuition and then teaching other people to do the same thing, and that having, all of the tools and having like your own like special way where you're like, well, this is like what I'm like really especially good at. And like, this is what you can use all these tools for and how it can help you.
Yeah.
So when we were talking, we were getting to know each other. what we ended up talking about was the process of spiritual breakthrough and the process of like personal breakdown, which is actually a huge part of this for people. And I don't know how it's going to be for younger generations or people that are being born into this.
Right.
Because even though
where it's more like acceptable and more talked about and more around.
And it's just the norm. And so it's really cool that it's like on trend and like everybody, you know, just saying like, oh, I have a crystal for that. Well, what's really cool about that is that everybody's receptive to that. People are like, oh, I love crystals. Yeah. I want to have, you know, which one. And it's easy. It's like right there in the conversation, but it wasn't always this way. Even in my own lifetime, like it wasn't always this way. So, there seems to be a process for people to get here. And there seems to be like a process of something happening to change what was to then like create a freedom and a new path.
Yeah.
And so we want to talk about that. And we're going to talk about our personal experiences. But so, you know, I would love to hear your process of how this came about for you. Like, who were, you know what I like to ask all the witches that come on the show, so I can't leave you out. Like, when did you when did you first know? When did you know you were a witch?
So my dad, who's passed away, when I was little, we used to watch the movie Labyrinth all the time.
Oh, like, me too.
Oh my God, Bowie, my heart. I have his candle on my altar over here. But I would watch that movie several times a day. And I watched it with my father, and he would always say, you know, that he was the Goblin King, but he would always tell me when I was little that I was a witch, that I was magical, and that I could be anything that I wanted to. And when I was really little, I used to sleep with the covers up over my head, like around my, like only my face was sticking out, because, you know, when you're a kid, monsters under the bed, in the closet. But I kind of always, I sensed that there was something around, that there was like something there that I was sensitive to. As like, I think about it now, and when I meditate on it now, it was probably partially, you know, the monsters under the bed or in the closet or whatever kids, you know, and their imaginations run wild. But part of me thinks I was always sensitive to the things around me. You know, I'm an empath, and I was always an empath. And I was always interested in the mystical and the occult and witches. You know, I watched The Craft growing up, and, you know, there was a shop in the town over from me where I got my first tarot deck when I was a teenager. And I used to read for some friends in college back and forth. And I always felt like it was a part of me, but I didn't express it openly. You know, the way that I grew up, it wasn't something that I said, you know, out in the open. I kind of like, I had a little pentagram, but I kind of kept it to myself. And so it was always there, but I really didn't, you know, come into that and come out of the broom closet, as we say, until about like 6 years ago. You know, that was when, you know, talking about this whole spiritual breakthroughs, that there was this moment, you know, 6 years ago where I just felt this complete liberation, you know, talking about this freedom you're talking about, to come back to myself and who I was, and really reclaim that word witch for myself. And I just felt it like in my bones. So it's always been there, but it was like, I didn't proclaim it, you know, until a little bit older in life.
It just is a fun time, you know, when we get to claim it for, so I'm a Scorpio, so my birthday was like a couple days before Halloween. So there was always the witchy stuff. Like I always got for my birthday little books about about witches. I had this like little witch book, and I was obsessed with cats when I was young, and pumpkin everything because I loved to eat pumpkin. So it was like all year round because of these things that I would get for my birthday or what I would love. I just always had pumpkins. And I probably like 10 pumpkins in my room right now. So it was always like, it felt personal because that's when my birthday was. And we always had Halloween parties. Yeah.
I love these. My slippers I'm wearing in May.
That's very cute. And so it all felt very personal, and it also just like felt very like fantasy, like, right? it wasn't real. I didn't really see any of that stuff out in the world. That was just kind of part of like what was in my bedroom and my stuffed animals. And I was actually thinking when you were talking about the labyrinth, because of being scared of things in the closet and things in the dark, I remember when we first watched the labyrinth, we were all pretty young and my sister was there and she was way younger. And right in the beginning where like all those like trolls are in the closet and the baby is screaming and it's before we see Bowie, but we know that something is like about to happen. We turned it off. We were like watching it. My mom was like, turn it off, turn it off. And we turned it off. And then I think that because it was in the same night that we were like, okay, well, let's just watch it just like, a little bit further. But my mom was always like very protective over like what we got to see as kids. Right. And so she was just like, okay, wait, I didn't know this was going to be like this. Like anyway. And also it's just the truth. I'm like, I don't know if I should say this or not. That is the first time that I saw, my first experience of Bowie. That is my very, very first experience of Bowie. And I was totally just like in love with him. I didn't know if he was a woman or a man. I was just like, yeah.
Well, he's got the best eyeshadow, but
that's totally amazing. I mean, and I was in love with her. And then eventually later in my life, I ended up dyeing my hair black, and it was just because of her. Like I always wanted to have like that black hair. Anyway, so I totally get that movie. I grew up with that movie. Like I still will watch that movie sometimes.
Oh, every year on my birthday, I watch it every year. I love it.
And it's interesting because these are more like the fairy tale fantasy aspects, right? Of witchcraft or of like spiritual practice or anything. But it's interesting how we all we identify with it. I was working at, actually don't want to say where I was working. I was working like a very famous current, just famous, well-known like spiritual supply shop. And I was reading tarot there. And I just started to realize I'm like, this is the Harry Potter generation. Actually, because of like the whole Harry Potter generation is why I'm able to have the kind of job that I have right now.
Yeah.
Because like people grew up on it. It was totally normalized. And that was all about witch school. I started going to a witch school with a bunch of friends, like kind of around, that time that stuff was out. But anyway, it's like, I think that was the way that we could all identify with that stuff right away. I was always identifying with the witches in, like in Sleeping Beauty. I was just Maleficent. I mean, I just was like, oh, there's something about me. She was a dragon. And of course, she was just like, evil bitch, but,
she was
jealous
like
and all that stuff.
Too.
Awesome.
She has this appeal, and
yes.
They always have that very slow language. And it's just like, it just draws you in, They're just...
Yeah. Yeah. Always like very drawn to it. So, but the work that witches are doing in the world now, and it's just like anyone, there's going to be the light and the dark. There's going to be good and bad. But it's all of the healing work. It's all of the healing. It's all of the personal nurturing and caretaking and being honest, like with yourself and being clear about your intentions and what kind of intentions do you want to set. And things like stones, yeah, they're also trendy and everybody likes to have them and they're fun, but they're also like have vibration. They're from the earth. You can put them on your body in ways and they will change what's going on with your chakras, change what's going on with probably the direction that things are flowing inside of your body.
Yeah. The minerals, they have energy, they have impact. There's real science behind crystals and why they actually work. They're not just pretty shiny things, they have these properties, and they've made such an impact on my life. That's why I get so excited and so passionate to share it with other people. I get so excited, like, oh my gosh, I had this bruise on my finger and I used a piece of hematite and it went away. Like, and it's so great for people to be excited about that and for it to be accepted. It's all about demystifying and almost decriminalizing the word witch, and telling people, like, we're healers, we're helpers. It's not this scary, you're always going to get those people that are like, oh, you're going to put a hex on me. Oh, you're going to use witchcraft against me. And, you know, you have to take the good and the bad with it. But that's a big part of like why I do what I do. And a big part of my business is showing, you know, all of the healing work that we're doing and all of the, you know, support that my craft has done for me that I want to use to help my gifts with other people, for other people.
Yeah. What's your favorite stone?
So I have a few. There's so many. I mean, I love Labradorite, which I actually have. I recorded my weekly show before, and I have this really cool, I saw your tattoo. So this is a Labradorite snake. I love it. Labradorite snake. So wow. I love Labradorite. I love amethyst, moonstone. I have this really cool piece of carnelian that doesn't really look like carnelian. It's got these swirls in it. It almost looks very planetary and like a little mini solar system in there. Like carnelian is really great because of its properties. I have a lot. It's hard to pick one.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's why I wanted to ask, because it's just kind of a funny question when you ask someone who loves stones, what's their favorite? They just go into this whole
20 stones later. I think these are the only ones that I really love.
Yeah. Okay, well, tell us a little about your tell us about your breakdown. Like, tell us about, because this is the thing, and this is happening, and it happens differently for all of us. Yeah. And whereas mine happened a really long time ago and totally broke me out of who I was, where I was, whoever I thought that I was going to be. Is very, very, very different than the person that I actually am. And I had no idea until I had that break. Right. And we were just talking about the tower. You know, we were just talking about, before we got on here, I mean, it's like I get on with people and then we start talking about all this stuff.
Yeah.
But that's just what we do. And but so we were talking about the tower. We were talking about, for those of you who maybe like don't know what the tower is, it's one of the major arcana in the tarot deck. And the idea of this tower, I mean, there's a lot of story behind it. It's the Tower of Babel and all of that, but it's the idea that you think that you know where you're going. Also, like, you have a very fixed idea of how things are. And it's not good or bad. It's just based on, you know, your reality. And it's like your reality has totally broken into a million pieces, and you can't put it back together. And so you cannot create that same reality again. That's actually what's hard and beautiful about the tower, is that you never know that it's coming. It's like getting the rug pulled out from underneath you. And then you're scrambling with whatever tools that you have, and you're trying to put the same reality like back together, and you can't. And it causes something totally different to have to happen.
I'm actually in a tower year this year, interestingly enough. And yes to everything you just said, but I was also thinking about it and looking at it like it's living your life in a way that, like, you can't put it back together the same way. So it's living your life in a completely new and different way. So like, you see the tower card. Yes, it looks terrifying. It's probably one of the most scary images, and the scariest images in, you know, the major arcana. These people are falling off of those of you who haven't seen it, there's people falling out of a burning tower, and it has that sense of crumbling, of falling apart. But then it's also, there's this sense of liberation, of rebuilding from something, from nothing, or just completely restructuring everything. But yeah, so I'm in a tower year this year. So I'm choosing to look at it that way, that I'm going to live my life in this completely new and reinvented way, which is one of the best ways to, you know, turn the tower card, rather than be, you know, oh, in despair, like my life's falling apart, everything sucks, woe is me type of, you know, mentality to have with that card. But so to rewind, when I left, I didn't finish college, I went to cosmetology school. And I was actually an esthetician for 14 years. I worked in spas and I did facials. I worked with organic skincare all over the state, New York City. I did makeup. I worked for magazines and I did stuff in New York. And, you know, I was going to work in a spa. I was going to have my own line of skincare. And I was working at this spa. And I guess I should also preface with also that I was on antidepressants for a long time, for like over 10 years. And I think about it now. I went on antidepressants when I was like right around like 18, 19, 20. And that was around the time I put my tarot deck away. I basically put all my magic away, and I was in college and I thought I was going to do A, B, C, and D. And I kind of got a little lost and a little scattered, as we do in our early 20s, because who knows what they're doing in their early 20s. Because you haven't hit your Saturn return yet, which we can talk about that because we love astrology. And that coincides with my whole spiritual breakthrough. Was I went off my antidepressants. I decided I wanted to go natural. I didn't want to be on medication anymore. I didn't think I needed it. I wanted to go an alternative, a natural route. And so like 6 years ago, I went off my antidepressants and I was doing fine, but I was working in this spa and I woke up one day and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. This doesn't make me happy. This is not who I am. This is not bringing me joy. I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin anymore. And I started meditating. I got into crystals. I got attuned to Reiki. I started digging out my witchcraft books. I started pulling out my old deck of tarot cards. And I started to notice I was having like this response in my body. And I thought I was going crazy. I was like having these physical symptoms and this physical experience. And I went to doctors. I got tests done. I was doing all these things. And I actually had this like vibration feeling, like this current of energy in my body. And I had never felt it before. It was like my entire body was waking up. Like I was raising myself, like, because I was thinking of where I was at or where I wasn't at. And my body, my physical body was trying to catch up to everything. But I didn't know this. I didn't understand this. And so every single doctor was like, you're fine. There's nothing wrong with you. Maybe you should go back on your antidepressants. And I was like, no, that's not it. I was like awake for the first time. So I call it like my nervous breakdown and my spiritual breakthrough, because it like reconnected me to myself and to everything that I became really passionate about. And crystals and tarot and my craft like saved me. And it really like opened me up to these gifts that were dormant and that had been suppressed and been numbed and been shoved down. And when they all came bubbling back up to the surface, it was like a tidal wave, like all of this coming all at once. I love that you're smiling because you're like, And, it's just been a wild process ever since, but it's one I wouldn't change, because of what everything has done for me. And I'm so grateful for the gift that I get to do this work and I get to share it with people. And, when I left the spa, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. I have no idea what I'm doing. I know that I love crystals. I know that I'm a really great intuitive tarot reader. I went and got my astrology chart done by a professional astrologer. It was through a friend. She recommended somebody, and I went and got my chart done. Now, I know what my sun sign is, but I didn't know anything about the rest of the chart. So when she did my chart, and she sat there with me for like 2.5 hours and went through my entire chart. And when she broke everything down and I saw all of this Pisces energy, and I saw I have a bunch of Sagittarius, and it was not anything that I was expecting to hear, but everything that was coming out of her mouth. She passed a comment at one point during the chart reading, and she was like, in essence, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And it was right around the time when I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. And that's when like the switch kind of started to flip. And I said, I love this. I love astrology. I have a very, I have an affinity for the sciences, right? I'm like a green witch, right? I love crystals, and I love, astronomy, and I love astrology, and I love science. So getting into astrology seemed like an incredible next step. And I said, I want to go to school to do what you're doing. I want to do this. And that was when I found Kepler, and I enrolled in an online class, and I started taking classes online while I was trying to figure myself out working in the restaurant business. And it's just started to steamroll ever since, like once I finished Kepler and I started doing charts for other people, and I got really excited at like the possibilities of what lie in your birth chart to as another layer to, offer guidance for people to look within, themselves yet again with astrology, just like with tarot.
I love astrology. Well, we had no intention of talking about the Tower card, but everything that you were saying, like that is actually the beautiful opportunity that the Tower card offers you. And there's Mars in the card, and there's the lightning, and there's Aquarius in the card, and that is the Aquarius aspect. And we are living in this age of Aquarius, and we can actually look at a lot of the things that we have all been currently going through, like as people in this age of Aquarius time, as like a giant tower experience. So there's opportunity that's offered. There's like a breakdown of the way that things were, and then there's catastrophe like at the same time, but there's new things, there's information that's being offered, there's new opportunity that's being offered, there's activation that's been being offered. So I was just getting chills when you were talking about all of that. And that the thing is, nowadays when I get the tarot card, that's how I look at it. Like I can see, I'm like, okay, so this might be rough, and it might like pull apart some things, but it's not, it also depends like how you see it, how in your reading, like how it's showing up for you. But there's an opening, there's more than a window that's being opened. There is an opportunity for channeling in the new. And then the other thing too, I was just talking with somebody about this, is like, it's about your vibration, right? So we aren't trained to listen to our intuition. People now are the people that are coming in now are, but like when I grew up, I can't say that entirely. This is not about all that. I'm like, I did music and I did martial arts. And so actually by default, by having those things in my life, I was actually learned how to listen to my body, how to listen to the senses. When music, you're listening for the tempo. When you're playing with other people, like you're listening, and you're listening for more than even aware of like what it is that you're listening for. But what happens in your life when things start to not feel good anymore, when you wake up and you're like, this is not making me happy, whether it ever did or not, but you all of a sudden are having the awareness that like, this isn't working for me anymore. Yeah. That's the message. Like you start having like a lower vibration. There's something of like being stuck, of being not excited. Yeah. Of being trapped, of being frustrated, of being angry, like, any of those. And then if you listen to that, it's life really kind of, at the very least, sometimes it's telling you turn and look this way, but sometimes it's just like, you just got to stop facing the direction that you're facing. you got to like look around and find, but you have to stop going down this path. You have to just stop, and you have to look for wherever else it is that you're going. And then you were doing all kinds of things that were changing your vibration. You were meditating, you were playing with crystals. The crystals are going to totally change your vibration. And actually like raising your vibration. So there was just like all of this energy, like a bunch of extra energy and excitement and all of those things. And when you get your energy to like a higher vibration, then you are then at a different level of like perceiving and drawing in and finding new experiences. We're just having, this, of course, we're just like having this conversation earlier today. But it is all about your vibration and the things that we eat.
Sorry, my dog wants to come in. Come on in.
Hello. The things that we eat affect our vibration. Yeah. So, I talk about that this body, okay, so the spirit may come from other places, but this body comes from the earth. It's fueled by things that we're eating that are from the earth. And so when we're eating raw foods and vegetables and things that like still have a live vibration to them, there was a totally different experience than if you're eating stuff that is like dead and plastic and full of chemicals and all these things. But what else grows in the earth are crystals. So food grows in the earth, but also crystals grow in the earth. Those things are still alive, and just because you have it doesn't mean it's dead. There's many of them that like you can even see inside, and you can see that it's growing and where it's growing. And so you're starting to like use all of these like live beings. There's people who look at those crystals at having, what do they call them? It's like their energy field. It's like an entity, and there's a name for it. And it's not deities. Of course it's not, but it's something like that. I forget what it's called. But like, so each type of crystal has like, a family. It's a family, and it has like a certain vibration, and it has like a certain life force. And so you can like meditate like with that life force, and you can do exercises, with that. But so anyway, you had started just kind of listening to your intuition, and then doing all of these things that changed your frequency, vibration, and then your life changed.
Yeah. And and to go back to the tower thing that we were talking about, it sucks. Like the tower moment sucks because it screws everything up, but it's that opportunity, that opening that portal to reassemble on the other side. And that's, all of this happened right around the time I had my Saturn return. And the Saturn return in astrology is like the tower moment. It's when Saturn, we were talking before, you're like, you have this affinity with Mars. I have this affinity with Saturn. I have Saturn in Scorpio in my 8th house.
Ooh.
Yeah. So it's like this real intense sort of putting me face to face with my own mortality, right? It's this thing of facing fears, of combating, these things that terrify us. Like Saturn is real hard truths. Saturn is, if you're going down, like we're talking about, if you're going down a path and it's not aligned with you anymore, or you're not having joy, or you're not feeling it, it's going to course correct you. And it might suck in the process, but it's all meant to be part of this journey that is not linear, and so none of it is wrong or bad. It's all part of it, but you will be course corrected. And that's what, and that all like culminated all at the same time. No wonder I was having this like almost visceral experience in my body, and I didn't know what was happening. And I'm going to go back out now. Sorry, my dog. Animals. Come on, sweetie. Go ahead, Tom. But that's what, now I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
Well, you're having like death and then rebirth. And that's the thing. Yeah, the thing about the tower too is that you cannot change it. You can't. And I also like to tell people, I'm like, when you're watching a movie and like the best part of the movie is when not when the tower happens, but all the best stuff is because of the fact that the tower happens. I mean,
the excitement,
the movie is based around that. Yeah. You know, I like to tell people, I used to talk a lot about like quitting your slave job, because that was always my thing. I was always like quitting these jobs, and I'd, you know, find the joy in them. And I waitressed for a long time. And so there was a lot of freedom there, and I loved it. And I got to meet all kinds of people until I had, you know, a job that was just really bad. And it drained all of my life force energy. And I was like, I can't be doing this any longer. I feel like when you're at your job, and as soon as you start to get clear that this isn't for you anymore, you have to quit.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like, if you're the kind of person that you can't just like quit and not have anything else set up in front, well, then you have to set something else up like immediately. I'm just the kind that I'm like, I have to just quit and trust. Like, I just have to quit and get out of the situation.
Well, what happened for me was I knew it wasn't going right, but I couldn't quit, and I didn't do it. And the universe did it for me. I ended up losing my job.
And that's what happens.
Yeah. It was like, you're not going to do it. I'm going to do it for you.
Yeah. Well, what happens in my case is I get injuries. So just to like also share, because they said I was going to share. So, and I've shared on this podcast before about, you know, my story with my family and all of that. But like my first big tower, the big one, the one that like broke me and the one that changed my whole life was when my younger brother he broke his neck. And it was that's an injury that like changes that person's life. And my family is so close, and it just like changed everything. And I was in my early 20s, and it changed my foundation. You know, I always had this family structure that I could lean on, but maybe didn't need to. Right. And then all of a sudden it was like all of us were individually broken, and nobody could really be there for each other. And we were all in pain, and it was just really scary and intense, and felt like I was on my own in a different way, like for the first time in my life. And it just changed everything. It was really confusing because I live in LA, my family doesn't live in LA. And so I was away during the time I was with my brother when he was in the hospital and all of that. And then when things started to kind of get back to normal, but there wasn't normal, it was a totally new everything. And I started to come back to LA. What was really confusing for me was that LA was completely the same. Like, LA doesn't change. You can live here and then live away from here for 6 months or 5 years, and then you come back and it's just the same. People don't even know you were gone for that long. You could just, for the most part, go to the same coffee shop. It was just like, you know, the same. And so that was really confusing for me, is that there was this way in which everything was still the same, but all of my personal reality and like my family reality and was different. It was so different. And so there was like a fight about that all the time. And so I was trying to pick up these pieces and then put them together in some way, the only way that I knew. And then it didn't work. And so it didn't work in any of the situations. And then I also was becoming like so changed from this situation. But the other thing too is that it broke me open. So I had like a breakdown, but it also broke me open in a way. My situation, there was so much pain that was involved in it. It just made me raw, and I became super sensitive and super psychic. And then I started to really learn from my situation all these things that I believe in, and it was very purposeful. But anyway, so that was my experience. And so it wasn't obvious to me that I was having it was obvious to me I was having a breakdown. That broke me down, and I was broken. It was like a 2-year process of me kind of trying to put pieces back together. But like I said, you can't put those pieces back together. And so I had to like grow. I had to grow into this like new version of myself, constantly fighting with these old pieces, trying to make them work. I was just a mess. Like, though I was telling you how I don't cry very often because I don't cry ever, kind of, because I have Capricorn moon. But then I was crying on a daily basis, and that wasn't normal for me. And it wasn't always that I was crying because I was sitting in a corner being sad about everything. It was just like confusion. Like I just didn't know how to function. but looking back at all of that, I have no idea if I didn't go through that, if I would be who I am. I mean, we have ideas that like, we would always eventually like grow into this certain person. Because I believe that like there's reasons that we go through things, and we're meant to come here to teach certain lessons and develop it into ourselves and grow into our purpose and all of that. But you look at these breakdown situations, you look at these tower situations, and we all can't help but wonder, like, if that didn't happen to me, if I didn't go through that experience, would I be who I am now?
Right.
Would I be where I am now?
Right.
And then after we learn, and so I was like sharing with Lauren before we started, like that's when I really started to learn about tarot. And actually, it was the tower card that taught me. So my cousin was around and she was doing readings for me, and I was somebody who wasn't into that kind of stuff at all. I was a Scorpio that thought I knew everything. And I was like, I don't believe in that shit. Like anytime there was like a psychic that was trying to come up and talk to me, like nowadays, if there was someone coming up that was like, I feel like something's going to happen, I'd be like, oh, tell me what's going to happen. I would just be, but back in the day, I was like, get away from me. I'm not giving you money. Like I just, was really rude about all of that. And actually think I had though gotten into astrology kind of right before. Somebody had given me sex signs and astrology, and I had a desk job, and I just decided to start reading it for fun, one day. And that's actually what started all of it for me. And I was reading about Scorpio, and I was just, because I'm like, nobody can explain me. There's no way that some book can explain me. And I'm reading like word for word things that I think are like super unique that are coming out of my mouth like on the regular basis, and they're like in the book. They're like, Scorpios say things like this. And of course I liked that though. So anyway, it just, and then it kind of just like went from there. And then that's how I learned about different perspectives. I mean, Scorpios, they're very fixed. They get very opinionated, very passionate about things that they believe in. They're very into like truth and honesty and all of that. So because they're really into that truth aspect, and I'm not saying that all Scorpios are honest, because there's also the whole manipulation and all that stuff that goes along with it. But because they're really into this like bravery of truth aspect, they do think that the information that they know at the time is like the truth. And what astrology taught me is that you and I can have two totally different truths, and it's true for you and it's true for me.
Yeah.
And that was huge. That was just giving me chills now. Like that was huge. That was just huge for me. And I was young. I was in my like early 20s, and not all Scorpios get there even early as that. It's like we all have a different ride and like how we're gonna like open up and perceive things. And I always say about Scorpios, I'm like, it takes them a while. Like, and they have to break down, because so I think that might be true for a lot of the fixed signs. There does have to be like a breakdown. So you're Capricorn?
So my sun is in Capricorn. My moon, rising, and Mars are all in Pisces, because we were talking about Pisces. We were talking about Mars before. So yeah. So I feel everything all the time.
No, about the crying that I was so the Capricorn moon, it makes me not feel everything. Like my Scorpio has the sense of knowing, like I have an awareness. But I'm because of this business, and I know a lot of empaths, and we're all empathic. Like we're all right. We're all psychic. We're all empathic. We all have this, but the people who identify as empaths are not the same as like everyone else. And a lot of people do this kind of work, or of course have like higher levels of like empathy and sensitivity, and there's their psychic abilities are tuned a bit more, and so that's that's how. But I'm always just kind of really grateful when I hear you guys talk, that I'm like, I can actually say that I don't identify as an empath, because I think it's the Capricorn moon.
Yeah. Well, because Capricorn gets this bad rap, and like I have my son there as like being cold and being, very, very stern and very serious. And like it is, it's a cardinal earth sign, right? It is very grounded. It is very driven. It is very ambitious. but it is also not like touchy-feely. It is not like hearts and flowers. It's like, I'm on a mission. I have something to do. I have somewhere to go, and I'm going to get there. So when you have your moon there, which is, you know, the symbol in your chart that is representative of your emotional state, your unconscious, it's how you feel, it's how you express, it's how you emote. And to have something there that is, you know, very, it's not a fixed sign, but it is very like, you know, it has a purpose. It has this like driven attitude, sort of like a little unchangeable, you know, that's gonna put a little bit of, not like a metal box around your heart, but it's gonna be protective of it, you know. It's not so easy to get in there. Whereas like, you know, you have like a Pisces, or you have like Cancer, or, you know, you have like your Scorpio is a little bit of a different water sign, like Cancer and Pisces. You know, Cancer wants to nurture everybody, and Pisces wants to feel your pain, you know. So it's like,
oh, yeah,
that's how it works, you know. And so it is like, and realizing that 6 years ago, and like I would go places, and I would go to a store, for example, and I'd walk in the store and I'd feel like I'm having a panic attack. And like my heart would start, like out of nowhere, my heart would start racing. I'd start to feel really uncomfortable. I'd start to like almost like feel this vibration, and I didn't know what was going on. I'm like, am I losing it? And then I spoke to a couple of other healers and the teachers that I had at the time, and they're like, no, you're very sensitive. You have to ask, you know, is this mine or is this somebody else's? Like, I have to discern sometimes when it's other people's shit and it's not mine. And I've learned to grow and realize when it's not mine and when it is mine, and setting up healthy boundaries, you know, energetic and, you know, different types of boundaries, and, you know, putting up like not a wall, but the knowing to protect myself, to shield myself, because otherwise I'll be walking around and everything will be coming at me from all over the place. And it's, if you don't experience that, or you're not in it, it's almost hard to explain to other people who don't. I try. And, but it is a very, almost unnerving thing that happens if you don't know what's happening, you know. And, you know, you when you start to hone in on it, when you start to use it in ways, it's really helpful and beneficial with what I do in my business and what I do for work. You know, when I sit down to have a reading with somebody, I can tell right off the bat what their energy is like when we're sitting there and we're talking. By, you know, I had a client, and she was sending me emails before her session, and I could feel her stress like through her email. And as soon as we sat down, I was like, you need to take a deep breath. You need to relax. You need to just, and you just like, you know, you're in it sometimes, you know, as an empath, you know, it's very, it's an interesting experience, to say the least.
Yeah. Well, then there's a lot to learn about boundaries and having healthy boundaries and saying no. And
that's a big one, saying no. I didn't know how to do that for a while. And you have to learn, and it's like setting your value, setting your worth, and knowing when to say no, and knowing when to put you first.
Mm-hmm. That's easier for a Capricorn, harder for Pisces energy, right?
Yeah. But I kind of I lean on my Capricorn sun, because, you know, our sun sign in our astrology charts, that's our core, right? That's our life force. That's our vitality. I always tell my clients, your sun sign is who you are when you're not even thinking about it. You know, it's who you are when you roll out of bed in the morning. You know, your rising sign is the sign that everybody sees, you know, like that's the person that everyone else experiences. So most people experience my Pisces. Most people don't always see the Capricorn in me, you know, but they'll get the Pisces. You said you're what, Aquarius rising?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And like,
So
it's very much like this hair. I'm very smiley. I was a waitress forever. I'm very talkative. I can have 1,000 conversations at once.
very social. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, I'm always like, that's not very Scorpio. I'm like Scorpio in disguise. But like you said, it's when you roll out of bed in the morning. I will have to say too, I'm like, I'm always starting with Scorpio. Like my work is there. Like I am always starting with that. All of my natural reactions are going to be that. I do, all my self work and all of that. But the fire is in Scorpio anyway. And then my Mars being conjunct my sun. I mean, I am a fighter. I am a protector. Like that voice of truth, that like fire, I'm a fire dragon. Like that fire is going to come out. And it's like my job to make sure that like I'm in line. So I'm not projecting on people. And so it's not like too aggressive.
There's balance there.
Well, and I always say, I'm like, I just know that I came here directly from the burning times. And so I'm just like, wow, about like, about boundaries and about saying no and about female empowerment and personal empowerment and being free, being single, like not being part of the church, just kind of like all of these. There was a like thing that somebody had wrote. It's not really a meme, but like something that was like posting on social media that was like, do something today that would have, had you like burned at the stake, however many years ago. And I'm like, most of us, like our whole way of existence, like you couldn't be being a free woman, you couldn't be being outspoken in these ways, you couldn't be, well, also you like couldn't be playing music, you couldn't be left-handed, you definitely couldn't be playing with crystals, you couldn't say that you were a witch,
right?
All of those things. And also not that long ago when my grandmother, who was also a Scorpio, when she had her first child, which was my mom, she ended up being a single mother. Like that was what happened in her situation. And like that kind of thing wasn't acceptable. You weren't, there were parents that didn't let their kids like hang out with my mom because her mom was a single mother and she was like a really good mother and still, came from a good home. But that kind of stuff like wasn't acceptable back then. It wasn't okay for women not to be married, spoken for. Wasn't okay. So, I've just felt like a lot of freedom in that way my whole life. I mean, just living all the way out here on the West Coast. That's the thing too. I do find that, and this is just like my personal like experience and things I've said, but I find like the more that you go back east, you go back in time a little bit because there's more tradition there. There's more tradition. People have, certain types of like culture has been like settled in certain types of areas, like longer. When I go out to England in the summers and like to go to this little medieval town that I call Avalon, that a lot of people call Avalon, but it's like Glastonbury, and there's very new age. Like, of course, it's very new age, and there's like, this new age awareness and consciousness like all around the world, but still the way that men and women like relate with each other and certain things that are like, okay, like I live in an environment where like men and women can like be friends and have coffee and have these kind of interactions with each other on the regular. And it has nothing to do with dating at all. It has nothing to do with like dating or that you would be like interested. But I found that, I would try to go to coffee with all these different people out, in England, and it was just getting me into trouble because it meant something, totally different to be like just a woman and free and just, wanting to have like different kinds of interactions with people and not have them be anything about dating. And that was really surprising to me because I'm like, but what, day and age are we living in? But anyway, so I always like to just remind, all of the women around, like we have incredible freedom nowadays. It doesn't mean to not be fighting for more, like all the way. But we do. We have incredible freedom, and to be able to like do this work and to be able to call ourselves witches, that's not, and even certain parts of the world still, you'd be killed for that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So, tell us about your show. You were mentioning that you have and I was seeing that you post about that you have a show that you do also on Sundays.
Yeah. So, you were talking about, the Tower card and having this kind of moment where, we're living in a world we haven't lived in before. Like everything kind of broke down. We had a pandemic attack. Like the world was changed. The world has totally changed. And so last year, like I went to school for astrology. I studied it. I went back in 2018 and I started seeing clients here and there. But I hadn't really like built my business. I hadn't really put everything together. I had all the pieces. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew what I wanted to offer, but I hadn't really put myself out there. And then last year, we were all out of work. We were all home. Everyone was on social media. Everyone was online. And I said, I think I'm going to start going live on Instagram. I'm just going to start doing it. I'm going to do it. Sorry, my dog. That's real life.
We knew what happened.
Yeah. I started going live. I said, I'm going to start going live once a week for like half an hour. And I'm going to talk about all of the things that I love to talk about: astrology, tarot, crystals. And I'm going to see what happens from there. And I, would type out a little show and I just started doing it. I actually started doing it on Mondays, and then I did a couple of Saturdays, and then it morphed into like a Sunday night thing. And the more I did it, it was good for live for a while when everybody was home. But then once the world started to open up, I noticed that, there wasn't as many people on there, but people were coming up to me. I watch your show. I see your recordings. I watch everything, like when I was coming in contact with random people at like some family functions, like this fall, I watch your show every week. I was like, oh, okay. That's amazing. I love it. And just people, I wouldn't have expected it. So I decided that since everyone was getting out and about in the world, I was going to I'm like, I'm going to record a show. I'm going to post it on Sundays. And I'll get into a rhythm and a habit, but that way people can watch it up whenever they want to. They don't have to be tied to this certain time. And I don't have to be tied to this certain time on this certain day. I'm just going to put the recording up there. People can watch it whenever they want. So I have a format, and so the show's called Witch Weekly. And it used to be like half an hour. It's kind of gotten shortened down now, anywhere between 8 and 20 minutes. And each week I go into, if there's any big astrology highlights, I pull a couple of tarot cards for the week. I sort of just give any updates or announcements on anything that I'm doing or involved in. Sometimes I called it the crystal corner. So I would highlight a certain crystal. I did a couple where I would highlight different like herbs, because I use different dried herbs in my ritual practices and in my spell bags. And so it's just a weekly show just for me to share my education and my excitement and my craft with everyone out there. And it's a way for people to stay up to date too with, because I'm always getting text messages, or I'm always getting, people at my job. Is Mercury retrograde? What's the moon looking like? What's going on up there, Lauren? Can you tell me? Can you help me out? Like I always get people coming to me for that, and I love it. So that's another reason why I wanted to do the show every week. And I know that there's a lot of shows out there. There's a lot of people doing the work that we're doing, but everyone has their own brand. Everyone has their own, unique little spin on everything. And so I make it real. I make it relatable. I don't edit it. It's like is what it is. It's raw and uncut, and it's just me,
That's awesome. So I was thinking while you were saying that, you should record the audio separate, and you can make it into a podcast.
I should.
And we will talk about that outside of the show.
You can help me with that.
I will. Yes, I will help you with that. That's so great. And that's what's so great, about social media and stuff right now is that and that was so great about the last year with COVID and like everybody being in in the way that we were, is that people still wanted to connect and they still wanted the information. And so they just went into their phones to get it.
Yeah. And I mean, there was a lot of horrible things that happened, but again, it's that tower moment, and it's finding a way to figure out, how can I make this, that, like, not make this better, but how can I make the most out of this, like, and I said to a lot of people, when we came out the other side of being home for so long and being away, once you don't, like, the energy of the planets that was going on in the last year gave us this opportunity that you didn't have to be the same person you were before the pandemic. You had this opportunity to essentially reinvent yourself. And would you choose to do that? I mean, I did.
Mm-hmm. Tell us about some astrology that's going on right now.
So we were talking before. So this week we have a total lunar eclipse in Sagittarius on Wednesday. And that kicks off our little eclipse season. And then on the 29th, Mercury actually does go retrograde in its home sign of Gemini. So eclipses are portals. They're these kind of massive energy holes. And it can be really intense, and it can be really transformational. It can be this, if you harness the energy properly, it can really, help you to finally let go of that old habit that's just been nagging at you, or that thing that you just keep doing even though it doesn't suit you well. It can finally be time to say sayonara to it, and with retrogrades, there's always this opportunity. And Saturn actually also just went retrograde. I forgot to mention that too. It's an opportunity for you to revisit things, for you to reevaluate, for you to realign and go over. They always say it's not an opportune time to start something new, but you can't just hide in your closet for the 3 weeks that Mercury's retrograde, because it happens, like 3 or so times a year for 3 weeks at a time. So like 9 weeks out of the year, what are you going to do? Nothing? No, just pay attention, be meticulous, back up your computers and make physical notes, or make sure your battery is charged, or you got gas in your car, or double check that text message, or just any of those things. It's just, don't do things without a little bit of a plan behind it, and you'll be all right. And this, it's a total lunar eclipse. And so you can feel in the next couple of days, this energy is amping up. We're in the Gemini season. It's all about, it's like scattered energy, but it's like wanting to do all of the things, because Gemini has so many interests and wants to just, go all over the place. It's very quick. So I always say, Geminis are really good at getting things started, but they're not always good at finishing things. So maybe go back over things that you've left, or you've kind of put on the side, and go back to those things and see how you can wrap things up instead of starting something new.
I'm going to be wrapping up school in the next 2 weeks.
There you
go. Not for good, but
for this year.
Good for the semester. Yes. And then I've heard that the total lunar eclipses are when things are removed from your life.
Yeah. There's a transformation. There's a rebirth. There's a letting go of things. There's, guys talking about like old, like outworn patterns, outworn habits, outworn things that just don't fit anymore, And Sagittarius wants to expand and explore and, do all the things. And, you can't do all the things if something's dragging you down or something's holding you back, So it can be a really expansive and expressive time if you allow it, if you harness it, if you access it, we were talking before, there's a lot of, be careful, don't do any rituals or manifestation magic during eclipses. You don't want to do this, you don't want to do that. And I respect so many other people who do this work. I guess I just don't like getting restrictions put on me, like don't do this here, don't do this there. So it's like, if you're smart about stuff, if you know how to do it right, not right, if you know how to do it within those, boundaries of what the sign is, like people always ask me about like ritual magic for moons and like, well, what should I be doing? What am I manifesting? Am I letting go? Am I doing this? And I say, well, it's important to look at the phase of the moon, but it's also important to look at the sign the moon is in and the other aspect patterns that are happening around, what's going on. So when you take all those things into account, because a moon in Pisces is different from a moon in Capricorn, as we both saw, and a moon in Sagittarius is different from a moon in Taurus. So it is very different energy, but it can really kind of allow this exploration. We'll use that word, is a great word for Sagittarius, I think. It's all about, the archer. It's about, shooting high and, dreaming big.
I have my Neptune and my Venus is in Sagittarius.
I have a what's called a stellium in Sagittarius. So I have Uranus, Neptune, and Jupiter all in Sagittarius.
Okay.
And a lot of people that were born within the same year will have that because they're like the generational planets. But that's really, I think, the extent of the fire in my chart, though. I'm a lot of water.
I'm a lot of fire.
It's okay. We create steam.
Yeah, totally. Well, gosh, we've talked about so many things. Thank you for coming here and talking about all of this with us.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I would love for you to share with everyone how they can find you. And so for those of you who are just listening on the podcast, it'll be in the podcast show notes. For those of you that are watching the video, just go check it out on YouTube. It'll have everything listed there. But just for people who are just listening now, to tell us how we can find you, where the best place to find you is.
So I'm most active on Instagram. So it's at Lauren Ann Alchemy, Ann with one N, Ann without an E, on Instagram. And I have a website where you can book services. I do tarot readings, I do astrology charts, and I do custom spell bags. That's www.laurenannalchemy.com. I also have a Facebook, which is also Lauren Ann Alchemy, and I do have a YouTube channel, again, Lauren Ann Alchemy. It's pretty easy to find me. If you just type that in, it's that across all the platforms. And all of my Witch Weekly videos are up on my YouTube. They're on IGTV, they're on Facebook. So I try to put it in all the different places so that if you have one and not the other, you can access it from anywhere. But yeah. That's how you can find me. And if you live in New Jersey, if you live near Asbury Park, this coming Sunday, May 30th, Memorial Day weekend, I'm doing a pop-up spell shop, I'm calling it, on Cookman Avenue. They shut it down to cars. It's just pedestrian traffic. And I'll be there with some pre-made spell bags and booking readings and, hanging out, chatting, talking about all the things on Sunday. And I might pop up a couple other times for the rest of the summer while they haven't shut down.
That's so great. It's going to be really fun, I'm sure, because it's just so busy. Everybody's out. But I love having a booth. That's actually how, Silverlake Priestess started, was me wanting to have a booth. And then I actually did have a booth a few times, but to be outside, to be in like a market type of environment and have, your witchy wares that you're selling, and then be doing readings and healings and things for people, being a waitress. And so you were saying that you're doing some of that work too. I just, I love interacting with people. live, like in that way, on the spot. And, you know, probably like way back in the day, I was doing the same kind of thing, you know, being at markets. And that's always what I love about going over to England in the summers, is just all the festivals, because it's just like that. It's like, you know, everybody comes together when the weather is nice and, you know, outside, but with all of these, you know, temporary, you know, markets. And it's so much fun. So I wish I was there. I could come, but we'll have to do something like that together in person in the future.
Absolutely. I love where you live. The last time I was out in LA, if I was going to move out there, I love your neighborhood. So I will absolutely come out and visit. Yes. We'll do something.
Yeah, it's really great out here. LA is just so huge, and there's so many different types of environments and neighborhoods and everything. Like, what I like about this out here is just it's a little bit more spread out. There's a ton of people here for sure, but it just feels a little bit less congested than some of the other areas. And you know, currently there's a lot of the artists and musicians and just non-traditional people live out here, so pretty cool.
Yeah, very cool.
So, well, it was so fun to be here with you and have this conversation. And thank you for joining us. And for everyone that's watching and listening, thank you for being here. You can find me at jaimeblack.com. It's JAIME. And all of my services and offerings are there. You can listen to all the podcasts on Silverlake Priestess. It's on iTunes. It's on Spotify. This is the new season. So if you're here watching this on Facebook, YouTube, right now the new season is just only on YouTube, and that's going to be my project when I get done with these next 2 weeks of schools to get everything up on all the apps. But thank you all for joining us, and please reach out to either of us, and we'd love to connect with you. And I'll see everybody next Sunday night. I'm live Sunday night at 7 on YouTube. So with that, we'll complete, and blessed be, and have a wonderful eclipse.
Thank you, James.